7 members of an organised crime group have been jailed for a combined total of 75 years after being found guilty of supplying an estimated £49 million worth of drugs a year. The 7 members, who were aged between 25 and 41 years old, dealt Class A drugs on a commercial scale and obtained potentially lethal firearms to enforce their operation. Drugs, with an estimated street value of £800,000, was seized by police after a series of arrests and searches starting in June 2020. However, expert analysis of the gang's communication indicated the 7 men were believed to be supplying nearly 900 kilos of Class A and B drugs per year, with an estimated street value of around £49 million. The 7 men were sentenced at Bournemouth Crown Court, and their sentencings are as follows. Jake Stephen Bastable, who's aged 36, and Joe Tommy Bastable, who's aged 34, were both sentenced to 17 years in prison for offences of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs and purchasing a firearm without authority. Gavin Newman, who's 44, of Bournemouth, was sentenced to 12 years and 4 months in jail for offences of conspiracy to supply Class A drugs, possessing a firearm without a certificate, and possessing ammunition without certificate. Dennis Howe, who's 35, of Bournemouth, was jailed for 5 years and 10 months. Zachariah Kasai Kavanagh, who's 25, he was sentenced to 10 years and 6 months in prison. And Aaron Newman, who's aged 41, of Bournemouth, was jailed for 4 years and 10 months, all for conspiracy to supply Class A drugs. Nicky Gent, who's 36, of Bournemouth, was sentenced to 8 years in prison for offences of being concerned in an arrangement which facilitates the acquisition, retention, use or control of criminal property by another and participation in the criminal activities of an organised crime group. The group's efforts to communicate through an encrypted messaging service were exposed, and a large quantity of drugs was seized during a series of arrests, as well as the firearm that they had obtained. The investigation into the organised crime group began in March 2020 and exposed how the gang used an encryption method called EncroChat to run their operation, which was directed by the brothers Joe and Jake Bastable and involved them in organising the buying and selling of large amounts of cocaine. With the Bastable brothers directing the group, Gavin Newman was involved in organising drivers to collect and deliver the drugs and also collected the firearm on their behalf before storing it at an address in Bournemouth. He later instructed his brother, Aaron Newman, to collect drugs from the address, and both Aaron Newman and Howe were involved in the transportation of cocaine in kilogram blocks, as well as the movements of money. Gent was involved in the storing and the counting of cash on behalf of the organised crime group, while Kasai Kavanagh operated his own drug dealing line after buying in wholesale amounts from the Bastable brothers. So guys, this is a new story coming from Bournemouth ways, where a gang has been jailed for 75 years after they supplied around £49 million of drugs each year. Absolute madness. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.